Welcome to Timber&Terra. I am Glenn, and it is springtime, and it's a nice spring. Things are starting to dry out, and it's a cleanup time before the grass makes things harder to find. So the project at hand today is to clean up some of this old debris from the farm that was operating here 50 plus years ago. There's the house. This is field. This is pasture. And this is a bunch of scrap metal. So I wanted to get to this now because once the grass starts growing, the leaves come out on these bushes, all this stuff is much more difficult to find. But there's fence wire there. There's bits and pieces of who knows what over there. There's a truck frame of some sort here. Sickle bar more sort of around that tree, or the tree grew up through it. I guess that's a manure spreader, or maybe some sort of a rake and something else. So I want to clean this up, and my plan is I'm gonna break open the excavator for the year. The excavator's not been started for, I guess, probably 6 months, 5 months, maybe last October. This is the end of April. So I thought was to take all this stuff on sort of that side, the pasture side of the rock wall, and bring it over here, easy access, and then at some point bring my flatbed over here and load it up. I'm guessing I'm gonna have at least 2 loads. And there's a bunch of stuff here. So I have a picture I'll show here in a second from 1966, an aerial view. This is an aerial view from 1966, almost 60 years ago. You can see this is the area that we're taking this metal from, and there's some sort of a structure. I was guessing it's a pole barn. It's hard to judge it from here. It doesn't really look that tall, but this appears to be one of the implements that we've removed from the scrap pile. Something else over here, I'm not sure what that is. This is the house. This is the original L. We tore this L down and made a larger one, and then added a garage right here. This hay barn here fell down 1995 or so, and I'm guessing was the milk parlor. This fell down shortly afterwards, and then this was gone when I moved in. So this is where the cows were kept, I'm guessing. The landscape is relatively unchanged in the last 60 years. This is still field, this is still field. This pasture here has grown up a little bit, this one here, and off to the right here, beyond where the picture took, it's grown up quite a bit. I'm guessing this was all open pasture probably at this time, but that's grown into the sort of that young forested area that you saw on the drone footage coming in. I believe there was a, well, it's pretty clear in the picture, there was a pole barn here at one point. So this, I think, is some of the roofing. There's other indications of it. I think over there's some concrete slab. Maybe they had a floor, although it looks rather thick from here. It's like a 10 or 12 inch floor. Rubber tire. Some milk jugs, I'm guessing, milk cans of some sort. I have a piece of metal there. But yes, easy to see now before all the greenery starts to come. So this is the time to do it. But for now, let's go see if the excavator will start. So my excavator is an E70B. I think it was built around 1994 or so. Excavators are sort of unique because in almost every brand, the weight of the machine is in their model number. So E70 is 7.0 metric tons. Metric ton is 2,200 pounds, which makes us about 15 to 16,000 pounds. So the E70B, or the E70 series, I think was only made for maybe 4 or 5 years. There's not a lot of them around. What took over was their 300 series Caterpillar, called it a 307. So that same 7 is in there, but instead of 70, it's 307. So 7 metric tons. A 308 is 8 metric tons. So this is the pump for the beast. This is like the pilot valves. These are hoses that go to the pilots, the joysticks. So this valve here is for the blade. All the other valves are in that valve bank there. I think there's either 2 pumps or a single pump that acts as 2. I think most excavators have at least 2 dedicated pumps. That's where you can have you know, major functions operate without one function impacting the other, like the stick and the boom, for instance. This pump here, I think, is for the blade, and this pump here is for the pilot assembly, pilot hydraulics. The other thing, this had a homemade thumb, you can see it there, with a sort of a very crude valve. The valve is on the other side, but it uses the hydraulics from the blade for a couple problems. Although you don't use the blade and the thumb at the same time, but if you do, it's an open valve system, so the flow will go where the easiest motion is. So generally you can use one or the other. The other problem is that this pump does not provide a lot of flow, so the movement of that thumb is very slow. In previous videos I've called it my hydraulically positioned mechanical thumb because that's how slow it feels. It beats going out and adjusting it manually with pins. It's not bad. I mean, I'm thankful to have one. So here's the hydraulic level. It's fine. So while I'm putting this thing back together, Caterpillar, for whatever reason, has, I think all their excavators begin in 3. So a 3, say a 311 would be 11 metric tons. You know, a 330, 30 metric tons. Other manufacturers like John Deere, Komatsu, Hyundai's will have generally a 1 preceding it. So a 120 would be 12 metric tons, 160, 16 metric tons. All right, this engine is a Mitsubishi. I've had 0 problems with it. Always seems to start fine. It does not like the cold weather, so I don't generally operate it in the cold. In fact, it's a little bit over full, but I didn't put a lot of hours on it. When I got this machine, the hour meter was broke. I really should get a new one. I don't use it enough to really change the oil based on the hours. I do it basically once a year or every other year if I don't put many hours on it. There's plenty of pink fluid in there. But I should replace it because I anticipate I'm going to start using this a bit more. And it would be nice to do maintenance based on hours rather than a calendar. There's the fuel sight glass filled with dyed diesel. This is the crude thumb. For whatever reason, they decided to put removable teeth on the thumb, which is fine. It doesn't line up with it. It doesn't have a common hinge point, so the location of the tips changes as the bucket changes orientation. But like I said, I pull out a lot of stumps with it. It does fine, but there's better things out there. All right. So this is a lever instead of I think modern ones are sort of a dial. See if it works. So while this is warming up, one detour I have to make before we go out there to adjust the scrap metal is my wife, we started a separate section for her sunflowers. It had been part of the garden. So we put some tarps on it last year to deaden the grass, and we removed the tarps today, and I was going to rototill it, but there is a significant rock right dead center. I could not move it with my little tractor, so we'll track down there with the excavator and see how big that rock is. So there were several clips here where the audio did not record. You can see the rock there, just the top of it, but I could easily tell with that 20 horsepower Kubota I just pointed to that I could not budge it, so I knew we needed something bigger than that little tractor and probably the excavator to successfully get that rock out. So this area that I'm digging the rock out of is going to be a sunflower garden that my wife likes to grow every year. We had it over there to the left, just beyond those poles where we grow the pole beans. So the larger area where you can see the rototiller behind the excavator bucket is the vegetable garden. You can see how fast the thumb is. I'm being a little funny. So, thumb is very slow, but it's very handy to have. It's slow because it's attached to that hydraulic pump for the blade, so it's just not a lot of flow. So I've thought of maybe trying to replumb it with one of the main hydraulic pumps to get a bit faster action, or maybe I should just upgrade the entire thumb, have a new thumb put on that at least has a common pin with the bucket, if not maybe a progressive thumb, and then just have the hydraulics done with a solenoid push-button valve at the same time. The valve that operates this is just a manual valve, so it's just it takes your hand, so while you're operating the thumb you cannot use the joysticks at the same time. So to have a push button on the joystick would be very handy. So here just traveling with the rock back out to where the scrap metal is. The rock itself is just under 3 feet, sort of diameter, I guess, aside if you want to call it that. My bucket's about 32 inches wide, so it does fit inside the bucket fairly well. So we've arrived here at the rock wall. I'll just dump that rock out near all the other rocks, and I'll start picking the metal. There's all kinds of small pieces of metal sort of buried in that rock wall. Between my wife and I, we got most of the small pieces out there. At least we're on top of the rock wall. If I ever move the rocks, I'm sure I'll find more underneath. Just all kinds of bits and pieces, mostly equipment, you know, maybe some rings that might have been part of some sort of a wheel or a tire. And then here I'm moving the largest piece, which is that truck frame. Has a differential and the leaf springs on it still. It's a little bit hard to maneuver because either the frame gets stuck between the teeth, which we'll see here in a bit, or just that when you clamp it, wants to orient itself, you know, sort of parallel with the bucket teeth, which is a bit of a challenge if trying to avoid hitting either myself in the cab or you on the camera. So we'll hit the clips that have the audio here in a second, so you don't have to listen to me anymore. can see that the tree has grown in pretty well there around the wheel. I didn't realize these trees had grown in around this thing that much. I knew that tree had grown in the middle of one, but I was sort of not expecting this. Well, I'll do the best I can to separate it. You know, I may need to come out here with a sawzall or something and do some of the finer work. But we'll see if we can't break at least part of this away. Well, I lost a tooth along the way. I didn't notice where it fell out. Best mine, I believe it was on this side of the wall when I was playing over here with this other smaller tree. I think most of this is really going to be handwork as far as collecting this and putting it in the junk pile. I don't know what all these rods are or what they were for. I don't know, maybe it was almost, I've seen these things like on a silo to wrap around the diameter of them to hold the silo together. Maybe that's what these were. I don't know. Alright, so that's what I'll do here. Pretty boring stuff to pick this up by hand. Ooh, this might be the tooth right here. Look at that. I do have extra pins. I don't have extra teeth though. I really should have a spare set, because I'm not always going to be this lucky to find that. Looks like there's a plastic trash can there. Just a bunch of crap. These look like they're cast. They're pretty brittle. The way they broke, they didn't bend. But I was lucky to be able to separate the wood from the metal. That was nice. Another cast piece of sprocket. Alright, well, I'll put that tooth back on. Clean the rest of this up. I can probably easily fit this on a single trailer. Once you compress and compact all that stuff, it doesn't take up as much room as I was thinking it would. I do have something else over there. I don't know how big that is. Let's walk around and see what that is. Frost and Wood, Smith Falls, Canada. Well, it looks to be about 5 or 6 feet wide. This, I'm guessing, is remnants from the pole barn, storage barn. But I haven't found much in the way of structural stuff left over. Some roofing. I think when last trip I made of scrap metal was a bunch of stuff over there beyond that road. I think there was maybe some tar paper. Looks like this track or a conveyor or something here. So I'll grab those things. Alright, so I'll cut something else here. Looks like an impeller or maybe a washing machine. This is like cast aluminum, I think. Alright, so I'll track over here. Guess I can just go over the rock wall like I did before and grab these two things. New pin, new washer. So the washer sits in that recess. And then the washer sits in there. So going this way. They do make special tools for this, but I just took a big punch and sort of made a concave end. That seems to work well for this. Well, maybe work well was an overstatement, but it does work. These are new. These are old, so maybe that's the difference, because I've not had much of an issue with these, but these all appear rather loose. This one's loose in there, but once you come against the stop where the washer is, it doesn't go any further. so I'll let this set overnight. I'll keep tightening these straps up until they feel like there's really no more give left to take up. And then I have this little bit of small stuff that I didn't want to put in that trailer because I didn't want it to fall out, that I'll probably just put in the back of my pickup when I take this to the salvage yard, scrap metal yard, whatever it's called. Alright, so we'll meet back up here when I'm ready to hook it to the truck and take off. So we are all strapped down, hooked up, ready to go. There's a bit of a sag. I'm guessing this load is a little heavier than I was thinking. I'm curious as to what you might think I have for scrap metal. I'll show you everything I have in a bit and walk around. But I wanted to review this type of load equalizing or load distributing hitch, which is an Andersen brand. I think it's the only brand that has this style. I'm sure it's a patented thing. But instead of having the spring arms where a chain goes up here to sort of make this joint so it rises up, it tends to want to sag. But with that that chain on the bottom, or with the spring and the chain going vertical, it tries to lift that up, so it resists doing this. So what it essentially does is it raises the back end up and puts some of the weight on there by actually putting a moment or a torque sort of that way inside the 2-inch receiver. But even with that, so instead of a spring, it uses the squishiness of this sort of a plastic, epoxy, whatever that is made out of. It's squishy, so I've tightened this up quite a bit. You control the amount of force it is by tightening that nut. There's one on each side. But in spite of that, it still sags quite a bit. This is a ram. I don't really like the coil springs in the back of the ram. It does make it ride nice, but I've had F-150s in the past and they seem to handle trailers a little bit better, but not nearly as squatting in the back as it would if I was to loosen this up or not even have this. So these chains are very tight. So anyhow, that makes this haul the trailer much easier than without that sort of a load equalizing or load distributing hitch. Andersen style, so that's the brand name. It's rather expensive. The other feature it has is inside here, this thing here resists twisting, so it also acts to be a sort of an anti-sway device as well. This particular trailer has, I think this is 12-inch, I think I've measured it before, a 12-inch I-beam, so the standard bars that come with it to sort of bolt onto the tongue was not long enough, so I had to weld this plate on, and then I attached the stock bar to this, sort of to have this thing here. So this is what I have on it for scrap, as far as making an educated guess as to how much it might weigh. And then all that little stuff that I had in the back of that farmer's wagon, the ATV wagon, is in the back here. So the real small stuff I just put in 5-gallon buckets, and then some of the bigger stuff, you know, is just loose in here. But I didn't want to put this stuff in the trailer because I was afraid that it would fall out. So my plan is to take it to the scrap yard tomorrow and see how much it weighs and see how much they pay me for it. See you then. Now that we're empty, we'll go around front and get weighed again and see what the damage is. So here's the total, about $300. You can see a breakdown of some other stuff I had just in a couple 5-gallon buckets, some brass, some copper wire, and some copper fittings added to the total. But for the most part, it was just under 3 tons, so maybe 5,500 pounds or so. It was worthwhile, and I cleaned up a mess at the same time in my property. So the trailer's empty. I've removed the equalizing chains from the tongue there, so that's how it sits, just with the empty tongue weight of the trailer with no weight distributing hitch hooked up to it. So that'll end it for this project. Empty trailer, clean field, I'm happy. I'm also in the middle of harvesting pasture spruce, which I started. I think I have four videos of that. I'll resume that when the conditions in the wood dry out a bit. Right now it's quite muddy, so if I go in there with the tractor, I'll create a lot of ruts unnecessarily. The fields have dried out fairly well, so I may start working on that road in the field that I started last year. So stay tuned for more of that work in the coming weeks, as well as resumption of logging until I get the board footage of spruce and probably supplement with some fir that I need for my project. Thanks for watching this one.